These ecosystems have evolved with fire, and they actually depend on fire. And so even the most basic science supports forests will burn, fuel will be consumed by fire, and a rebirth of that forest is dependent on fire in the natural ecosystem process. That includes reducing fuel loads on the landscape, providing wildlife habitat, cycling of soil nutrients, and allowing a natural process that will occur regardless of whether or not we intervene or not, to occur under our terms. And so on years when we have wetter springs, on years when we have favorable conditions, we want to allow fire to play a natural role, because on years when it's drier or we have less favorable conditions, we won't be able to corral or control fires in a way that we will in years when we have more favorable conditions. Our objective is to have fire burn at a range of severities and intensities. What we don't want to see is entire watersheds completely burned at high severity where there's no forest living at the end of that fire. What we'd like to see are patches and patterns of tree mortality with some overstory consumption, some areas where we have a very light ground fire that only consumes the surface fuels but does not get into the crowns, and in a range and a mosaic pattern of fire effects out there, because science has shown that that's what a naturally occurring fire regime should look like in certain systems. In some higher elevation systems, those are lethal fire regimes, and so they are renewed by a lot of canopy and overstory mortality. And so that new succession of trees and forest is now catalyzed by that complete consumption. But in many cases, lower elevation, mixed or non-lethal fire regimes, we want to see a range of fire effects where we're consuming ground fuels and adding disturbance to a landscape that has had disturbance removed from it. Fire suppression for the last 50 to 60 to 100 years has allowed for a condition to occur on those landscapes that is not natural. And so those areas haven't seen fire, and when we get a large fire in those areas under the right conditions, our concern is losing the entire watershed as opposed to having a range of fire effects. The difference between the Nebo fire and the Sturgill fire is the type of forest and type of fire regime that it has. The Sturgill fire is by and large in the Minam River drainage at a lower elevation, a lot of mixed ponderosa pine forest, which has seen relatively low severity burning and not a lot of overstory mortality, a lot of green trees left on the landscape. The Nebo fire and parts of the Sturgill fire in the headwaters, some of that burns in subalpine fir. And when subalpine fir burns, it has a tendency on windier or drier or warmer days to make runs, torching runs and group torching, which has mortality for larger pockets of forest. And so we still see a range of fire effects out there, patches of untouched, unburned fuel, patches with low severity, but by and large, those lower elevation pieces in the Minam River have less mortality than some of the higher elevation areas that have that subalpine fir component. Fire on the landscape, of course, when it's occurring, chases some wildlife out of the area, but in subsequent years, it creates openings, creates diversity in habitat, and we expect an abundance of both large megafauna and other types of species to return to those areas in greater numbers. None of these decisions come without some trade-off. The smoke is an impact to the communities around the fire, not just locally, but regionally. There are closures that impact people who wish to hunt in these areas and recreate in these areas during the summer. And there are the threat of fires becoming unmanageable and impacting infrastructure or private property that we do not wish to have fire upon. And those are risks that we have to manage. The benefit of having fire on the landscape is taking advantage of conditions where we can allow a natural process to occur when it's more favorable. And so we should be asking ourselves in these remote areas, in these wilderness areas, of why should we continually suppress fire at the smallest size when doing so defers the risk and the threat to that landscape further into the future. We know that we can't stop fire from being on the landscape, but when and where we can manage fire on the landscape, we should be looking for opportunities to do so. For years and years and years, we put fires out every chance we got. And when you fly over the Eagle Cap Wilderness, you see a sea of green trees and you see not a lot of diversity. You don't see very many disturbance agents in there. And so now we're trying to change that and trying to make it a more resilient landscape, for the future.